Hello. So in this video, I'm going to talk about percentage. So the definition of percentage is literally means per hundred or parts of per hundred. So when we write 40%, this is equivalent to the fraction 40 out of 100 or the decimal 0.040. Notice that 80 out of 200 and 10 out of 25, they're all 40%. Since when you take a look, 80 out of 200, if I turn the denominator into 100, what will happen? So I need to divide it by 2 on the top and bottom. So I will got 14 out of 100. Similarly to 10 out of 25, I want to turn the denominator become 100. That means I need to times 4 on the top and the bottom. I will end up to have 14 out of 100. So that means 18 out of 200 is equal to 40%. 10 out of 25 also equals to 14%. So here's an example. 243 people out of 400 states that they like dogs. What's the percentage like? So we have 243 people out of 400 states that they like dogs. You can either convert this into divided by 4 on the top and bottom. So you will have what? 60.75 over 100. So this is equal to what? 60.75%. Or you can use a calculator to calculate 243 divided by 400. This is equal to 0.6075, which is 60.75%. Okay, so now write each as a percent. Okay, the first one, 1 over 4. If you use a calculator, 1 over 4 is equal to 0.25. And then after you get the decimal, you times 100 to get the percentage. This is equal to 25%. Second one, decimal 0.02. I times 100%, so I have what? 2%. Also, for a decimal greater than 1, it's the same. 2.35 times 100%, you have 235%. Okay, so now take a look. The sales tax in a town is 9.4%. How much tax will you pay on 114 purchase? So tax is a really regular and a really common application percentage problem because we use it every day. Since we're in Washington, we might not have income tax, but we have a sales tax. So now take a look. So the item that you're trying to purchase is 140 US dollar. You times the tax, which is 4.5%. This means you're paying 9.4% of the item value. So this is equivalent to 140 times what? 0.094. Then you get the tax that you're paying for, which is 13.16. That's how much you're paying. This is just the tax, not the total. So here's another example. In the news, you hear tuition is expected to increasing by 70% next year. If the tuition this year is 1,200 per quarter, what will it be next year? Okay, this is another percentage problem. Again, so let's see how much do you increase. So originally it was 1,200, right? You increase by 7%, so you use 1,200 times 7%, which is equivalent to 1,200 times 0.7. So this is equals to 84. But this is how much they increase, the amount they increase, not the total amount that you need to pay. They ask you what will it be next year. So that means you need to add 1,200 added to 84. That's how much you're going to pay next year totally. That's for the tuition. You're not just paying the 84. 84 is how much more you're going to pay compared to this year. Okay, this is first method. So the second method is we use 120 times, since it's increased by 7%. So that means the next year's condition would be the current tuition plus the addition 7%. So the current condition we will consider is 100% plus 7%. So totally would be 107. So you have 1200 times 1.07. You will still get 1284. Okay. So given two quantity, so there's a new definition. One is called absolute change. Absolute change is the ending quantity subtract the starting quantity, absolute value. If it's a negative number, we will say, hey, decrease. If it's a positive number, we'll say increased. Relative change is the ending quantity over the starting quantity. That's the relative change. So absolute change has the same unit as the original quantity. Second thing is relative change gives the percentage change, and the starting quantity is called the base of the percentage change, because the base, the numerator, the denominator is always the starting quantity. So now take a look. The value of the car drops from 17,400 to 6,800 over the last year. What percentage decrease in this? So how do we do this one? So now take a look. Let's find out what will be the absolute change. So the absolute change would be what? The ending quantity subtract the starting quantity, absolute value. So the ending quantity would be 6,800 subtract 7,400. This is equal to negative 600 absolute value, which is 600. So that means the absolute change of this amount is 600. We can say, hey, the value of a car dropped 600 over the last year. Okay, now is the relative change. So since we're computing the percent decrease relative to the starting value, we compute the percentage out of 17,400. Okay, I think I did something wrong for the note. Here should be, this one should be the absolute change. So the ratio should be the absolute change over the starting quantity. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's continue. So what would be the percentage change, percent decrease in this case? Think about it. You can pause the video and try to see if you can calculate that. Again, since we're computing the percent decrease relative to the starting value, so we need to have, by our formula, the relative change equals to the absolute change over the starting value. So the absolute change is what? by the previous step, we know that it will be 600. And the starting value is what? The price is from 17,400. So that gives you 0.081 in decimal, which is, we convert this into a percentage. This is 8.1%. So we can say the value of a car dropped 8.1% over the last year. Okay, next example. So there are about 75 QFC supermarket in the US. Albertson have about 215 stores. Compare the size of these two companies. Okay, how to do this? So first of all, when we're trying to compare this, make a comparison, we must ask first whether it's an absolute or relative comparison. So the absolute differences should be what? You can use 215 stores subtract 75, or you can use 75 subtract 215. They should be the same after they take the absolute value. If you use the first one, you will end up to have 114 positive number. If you use this one, it will be negative 114, but after take the absolute value, they all equals to 114. So the differences between the Albertson store, the number of Albertson store and the number of QFC is 114. So now that tells us what? If we using QFC as the base, we have what? The absolute change over the value of the QFC, which is 75. This is equal to 1.867, equivalent to 186.7%. So this tells us that, hey, Albertson is 186.7% larger than QFC. QFC. So the other one, if we using Albertson as the base, we have what? Still, you use the absolute change, which is 140, over the number of the Albertson, 215, you will have 0.651. Then we can state QFC is 65.1% smaller than Albertson. Okay, that's the comparison. So now let's take a look at next one. Suppose the stock drops in the value 60% in 1 week and then increase the value. Then next week by 75%. Is the value higher or lower where it started? So for this question, to answer this question, you suppose the value, let's start in by 100 because that's easier for us to compute. You can suppose it's 1,000 or 500 or 2,000, whatever that you like, but 100 is easier. You can use it even 1. The reason I do 100 is because when you're computing with percentage, you converted percentage to decimal, you need to divide it by 100, and then you times 100, you will end up to get what? Just cancel out, right? Anyway, so that's why I supposed the stock value started at 100. So after 1 week, the value dropped by 60%. So that means original you have 100, and then you drop 60%, you use 100 times 60%. That's how much you drop. So now this is the value of the stock right now. Oops. Which is equal 40 bucks. And then in the next week, so next week, the stock increased 75%. Here's the catch. The base is going to change, because when we talk about increased by 75%, we based on the last week's value, which is $14, not $100. So when we're computing 75% increase, we use the base. We use $14 as the base. And then the increasing 75%. So I have 40 plus 30, which is equals to 70. So in the end, this is the end value. In the end, the stock is still $13 lower than the starting value. So the value is lower than what it start, because it's starting with at 100. Okay. I believe that's the last example. A politician's support increased from 14 of the voters to 50 of the voter describe the change. Okay, so even though this is not a number, we're not used by the number, but the idea is the same. So when it comes to change, there are two change, either absolute change or relative change. So what is the absolute change? So the absolute change should be the ending value or ending quantity, subtract the starting quantity, and take absolute value, right? So the ending quantity should be what? Increases to 50%. So I have 50%, subtract the starting quantity, which is 40%, that gives you 10%. So that means the politician support increased 10%. So now is the relative change. Relative change is equals to a absolute change over the starting quantity. So the absolute change is 10%, right? So starting with what? From 14%. So I have 14%. So that gives you what? 25%. 10 divided by 40 is equals to 0.125, which is 25%. So we can say that, hey, the politician support increased by 25%. Okay, so that's it for today's class. We'll talk about more about in the other video. Let me know if you have any questions.